Their housekeeping items is just if you pressed on the participant box, if you wanted to answer without using the chat box, like yes, no, or raising your hand, if there's any of those questions being asked today, as well as just being mindful of just of doing that. But without further ado, I would like to pass on the mic to our senior program manager, Mark Clark from TARC.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It's the first of a series of 4 webinars for our voter and census Canvas programming, inviting UIOs across the nation and others to be participants in this civic engagement moment. Today is an observance that's part of the National Voter Registration Day, and across the nation, hundreds of organizations and others will be active in the virtual space and in-person programs and ceremonies to observe this momentous day. This kicks off a week of activities, so keep your eye out and your ear to the ground for other activities around voter registration efforts that are getting underway this week. We'll get started in just a few minutes with our presenters, but I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about NCUIH. The National Council of Urban Indian Health is a membership-based nonprofit that represents 42 urban Indian health programs across the nation in some 22 states. The UIOs provide essential health and social services for American Indians and Alaska Natives who live in urban settings. I am the Senior Program Manager of the Technical Assistance and Research Center. That's a division within TARC. We work with a lot of distance learning, community of learning opportunities, and other kinds of efforts to keep folks acquainted with the concerns and interests and the emerging challenges that face our UIOs. Today's webinar, Increasing Voter Registration and Census Completion During the Pandemic, is being presented by our presenters from the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake City. Our presenters are Victoria Migoli and Samira Tsabetsaye-Hitlall. I'm probably not doing very well with that name, but I'm going to hand it off to Victoria. Again, as a reminder, if you've joined us late, we ask you to put your name, tribal affiliation, and organization in the chat box as a way of keeping us abreast of who's joined in the conversation today. We will be prepared to monitor your questions as you enter them in the chat box. So we'll keep track of questions that arise during the presentation, and we ask that you will hold them to the end. We'll have a Q&A at the end and talk a little bit more about resources, and finally our urgent call to action that'll be part of how we close out today's webinar, and we'll talk about our next webinar as well. So without further ado, I'll introduce Victoria Migoli and hand off the mic to her.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm just going to kind of give a little background about how Samira has used some things that we've learned from COVID testing and such to do the census registration and everything. So, and then can we go to the next slide? I'm Victoria, and I am the CDC project coordinator at the Urban Indian Center. I coordinate our Good Health and Wellness in Indian Country grant, or cooperative agreement, sorry. And then I also have been tasked with being our COVID coordinating manager, and that just started in July. So I oversee all of our COVID drive-thru testing, logistics, and all of that. So it's been a lot, but it's been good. It's been a learning experience. So for us at the Urban Indian Center, everything kind of started in March, early on in March. Maybe some of you heard about it. On March 11th, Rudy Gobert of the Jazz tested positive for COVID. And that started this really big snowball effect that impacted our organization, because we had some people at the event that were in close contact with Rudy Gobert. So it was just kind of this snowball effect of very quickly kind of figuring out and learning what needs to happen, people having to quarantine, isolate, and learning about it very much on the spot and figuring that out. So right away, our executive director, Mo Smith, went to Arizona in March to learn from them about their best practices and how they were doing COVID testing, as they had already started doing drive-through and walk-up COVID testing there. So with that, he came back and we decided we needed to start offering COVID testing here at the center. The University of Utah has a wellness bus that's supposed to be for chronic conditions, but they had converted it into doing COVID testing. So we partnered with them initially in May for our first drive-through COVID event, and as well in June. So that was when we first started it. At the very first one, we learned a lot. People were rolling their windows down, so we very quickly learned from the wellness bus how they did the process of making sure it was a contactless event and keeping windows up. Our first priority for sure was making sure staff and clients were safe. All of our staff are required to wear face masks the entire event, even if there's no cars, even though they're outside, they still have to wear a face mask the whole time. If a client walks up to get tested for COVID, or at our other, we also have had a resource fair, drive-through, anything like that. If they're going to roll down their windows or they're walking up, then we require our staff to also wear a face shield. We also use tables to set up for the walk-ups as a barrier to make sure we're staying 6 feet away. We learned very quickly that when people walk up at these drive-through events, whether it's COVID testing or a resource fair or Census, that people tend to kind of get close pretty quickly. So we use our tables to put in between so that they have to come on the other side of the table, and that helps create a barrier and helps us remain 6 feet away from them. If you can go to the next slide, please. And then we were able to do contactless registration for all of our events. We now partner with the Utah Department of Health and the Utah Public Health Labs at our COVID testing events. And all the registration forms are online and can be done over the phone. So when someone pulls up, this is an example of what I myself would hold up. We hold up this sign that asks people to leave their windows rolled up, gives our phone number, and then we just let them know that we're going to be asking them some information and helping them through the process. Depending on how busy we anticipate the event being, we usually have anywhere from 4 to 6 people doing this process to make sure people are getting through quickly. We've learned that the part that takes the longest at most events is the registration process. If it's COVID testing or flu shot, the flu shot or the COVID swabbing testing is very quick and they get through that part very quickly. But the registration process is always a little bit more time consuming. After we hold up this sign, we kind of walk through a script with the client and go through the process with them. We offer to either complete registration for them, or we offer to send them a link and they can complete it themselves on their cell phone. Most people choose to do it themselves, but we do have the capabilities to do it for them over the phone if they're not comfortable with the technology, or maybe they don't have a phone, or maybe they have a Minutes phone, they don't have access to internet, anything like that. And it's been the same with the census, is that we're also able to fill that out for them, so people aren't having to fill it out themselves. This has been really helpful, specifically with the elder population as well, just to allow them to be able to come to these things but not feel overwhelmed if they don't know how to do DocuSign or fill out these online registration forms themselves. Then they can just give us the information and we complete it for them. Each staff uses a work cell phone. Not all of our staff have a work cell phone on a day-to-day basis. So we purchased some extra cell phones to use at these events to make sure we're remaining HIPAA compliant, so that clients are not calling staff's personal cell phones. They're calling a designated work cell phone, and that's all it's used for. You can go to the next slide, please. So we've trained, before every event, we train the staff that are doing the registration part to make sure they know what information they need to gather and what they need to have the clients complete and fill out. So we train each staff that's part of that. We kind of have a core team now that's usually probably about 4 to 5 of the same people that are generally that core team doing our registration part, which has helped significantly to not rotate in different staff at every event, because they really have the process down now. They know how to do it. If something changes, we're able to train them very quickly on it, and they are able to grasp it quickly and make that change, and it works well. We give our staff each a script to follow for over the phone. They don't have to follow the script word for word. This is just to help them make sure they don't miss anything, so they can check off whatever the sentence to make sure they've asked this question and asked this other question. So we give them a script to follow just so that they don't miss any important information. Before all of our drive-through events, including our back to school resource fair where they did census, they had people complete the census. We do practice runs outside in our parking lot, and the practice runs we've learned a lot from what's going to work well and what's not. On top of that, we also have a staff member drive through each event and complete the entire process. This includes that at every COVID testing event, at least one of our staff gets tested just to go through the process, and they're able to help us find any issues and point out what is working well. That having staff drive through each event, at least one staff drive through each event, has helped us learn a lot. We have really learned, maybe DocuSign worked great on the iPad, but it's not opening up on the phone well. The words are overlapping or this or that. And we wouldn't know that information unless we had staff go through the event, because you can prep all you want and it works well on your end, but it doesn't always work well on the client's end. So we've learned a lot by doing that. We have also learned a lot just from collaboration. As I said in the beginning, we collaborated with the University of Utah Wellness Bus, and we learned a lot from their process. They were the ones that first showed us that they held up those signs that said, don't unroll your windows, and they just did everything over the phone. We've also learned a lot from the Utah Department of Health as we partner with them now with all of our testings. With partnering with the Utah Department of Health, we've also become a health jurisdiction with tribes, and this has allowed us to gain access to EpiTracks, and that's allowed us to be able to basically kind of take over the care for those that are registered at our organization. We're able to notify the positives, we're able to do the contact tracing ourselves, and we're able to go through that process with them. In Utah, they do not do ongoing follow-up with those that test positive, and was also enabled us to be able to do that. Our staff calls them on a daily basis or texts people who test positive that are enrolled members at our organization, and they follow up with them, make sure they're doing well. If you can go to the next slide, please. So all of our events, including any of the census events, our COVID testing, flu shot events, every event, we really have been trying to encourage prevention from COVID. So every person that comes through the event, if there's 4 people in the car and they're all getting tested for COVID or they're all getting a flu shot, every person in that car gets a PPE goodie bag. And in that goodie bag, we include a face mask, we include hand sanitizer, we include a chapstick, we include brochures and flyers relevant to any services at the Urban Indian Center or upcoming events. So in this picture, you can see we have this brochure here that says learn about our community health workers. With our CDC grant, we hired community health workers, so we created a brochure to let the clients know about them. So we include all of that information in there. We also include informational sheets about COVID prevention, when to quarantine, when to isolate, how to wear a face mask correctly. For flu shot events, we put in the information about side effects that you might encounter from receiving the flu shot, what to expect. We put everything in that one bag so that we're not handing people information and different things at every single station through the event. This way we just hand them one bag one time and it has everything in it. We also started including our HIPAA rules in that bag, although only those that are registered at the Urban Indian Center, are required to sign the HIPAA once a year. We just put it in there for everybody, and then we can let them know that those HIPAA rules are in their goodie bag, and they can read those if they'd like to. We don't turn away people who are not American Indian or Alaska Native or anyone who's not registered at our center for the COVID testing or a flu shot event. We do targeted advertising for that population, but if people show up, we're not turning them away, especially with the COVID testing. We're encouraging the people to get tested if they need to. We also allow testing for people who don't have symptoms or haven't been exposed. Anyone can come and get tested at our COVID testing. The reason why we've been able to allow this is because the Utah Department of Health provides the testers as well as all of the stuff to do the testing. They provide the swabbing and all the kits, the testing kits. So it's actually been a great partnership with them, and it's allowed us to not turn people away who come to get tested. We also are in a spot where we get a lot of homeless and transient population at our center and walking up when we're doing events. So that's one of the reasons why we've liked including this PPE goodie bag to every person, because a lot of times they show up with no face mask and maybe they don't have any hand sanitizer. So we're able to provide every person with that comes up to the event. So with all of those things that we've learned from the COVID testing, initially beginning our drive-through events in May, and we've done 1 to 2 drive-through COVID testing events every month since then. This Saturday, we're doing our first drive-through flu shot event, and we're partnering with a radio station here in Utah. That's pretty big. So we're anticipating a pretty large turnout. So makes me a little nervous, but hopefully it goes well. It should go well, and we will be including all of this COVID prevention in our PPE goodie bag for the flu shot event as well, because we still want to spread all the information about how to prevent COVID and how to remain safe. And then we will also include where they can go to get tested for COVID if that's a need. We will have a drive-through COVID testing in October, but we include information about all the COVID testing events coming up, because obviously if someone is symptomatic or has been exposed, we don't want them waiting a month to come get tested here. We want them to go and get tested as soon as they can. So we include all of the information about any other drive-through COVID testing or where they can go as well in those goodie bags, so that they have access and they know where they can go. And then with all of these things we've learned from here, we've been able to utilize them. Samira has taken them and utilized them in our census and having people get registered for the census and complete that. If you can go to the next slide, please. So then I'm going to turn it over to Samira, and she's going to kind of combine the two and show you how we've taken what we've learned, our best practices with collaborating with partners, all the PPE, the safety of staff, safety of clients, and how we've used that to encourage people to complete the census and encourage people to get registered to vote. So I'll turn over to Samira.
Awesome. Thank you, Tori. And for myself, my name is Samira Tsabetsaye-Hitlall. I come from the Zuni Pueblo, actually Pueblo of Zuni and Navajo tribe. And then myself, my title is that I work as an outreach coordinator. So before COVID had hit, I was helping with coordinating events. If community partners wanted us to help promote their events as well, vice versa, I was on board and helping prepare those things, and in-house the events that we do every month for our community to participate in. And then COVID hit, and I was like, man, I think I'm out of a job. But then we got pretty creative with what Tori had said, and also had taken from our partnering urban and Indian health community centers on what they were doing, which was the COVID testing. And then plus the media specialist part as my job as well too bumped up a bit more. You know, we can't meet in person, so virtual meetings, these webinars, and YouTube, all those social media channels also played a big part in what we do now as well. So that is a part of my part of what we do here at our center. If you can, please go to the next slide. So before pre-COVID, in February, we had gotten on board with, we have our own Salt Lake City Marathon that takes part here in a neighboring big park that we have here called Liberty Park. And we were like, okay, let's do this marathon. Let's get our clients and staff signed on. And then when COVID had hit, we couldn't do it anymore. So we were like, okay, what can we still pick up the pieces and run with? So our executive director, Maurice Smith, he was like, let's have them do a virtual challenge, but we'll still have them practice being a safe distance away. We're still going to encourage them to keep active. Even during, you know, this pandemic, we were all, you know, kept up in our house and not doing much. You know, the fridge is there, but what can we encourage them to do in a healthy way? So we came up with this running medicine. And actually, Running Medicine is a group based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So they were already doing this Running Medicine group in their own chapter houses all the way from New Mexico to Arizona. And in February, we wanted to do our own Running Medicine Salt Lake City group. And a part of the challenge, it was a 4-week challenge during the summer for 1 month that you run Walk Your Age challenge. So our staff and community members still participated virtually. They recorded what they did by Facebook and sent it to us. They tracked their miles every week of what they did. And part of this as well, you can see this is also our fitness coordinator Trey that you see pictured on the left and the far right. It was still entailed the census. And we came up with the slogan of be active, be counted, be 6 feet away. And we promoted it through everything we did that month. We actually recorded for each week stretching tips that they could do on YouTube channel. And then at the end of every recording, they helped encourage, you know, get counted on the census. It's important in our community. Be active. We know we can't be together right now, you know, and you're alone, but there's still things you can still do alone to take care of your body. So it was really fun to get this out there. And then each recording was from different community members that were runners, but now they walk, or all they like to do was walk, or running has just been a part of their life this whole time. And they were like, yeah, of course, we'll promote the census with you. So that was a really big push. That was awesome to see in our community support that. And then below you can see all of our staff sporting the shirt as well. And that was one of our first census posters we got to promote in our community too. Go right ahead and go to the next slide, please. And then also we got a partner from Denver, Colorado. She helps us see how our self-response rates were going. It's kind of hard to tell, but from when we jumped on the census, it was mentioned to us about last November, you know, you guys really need to get on board in your urban Indian community. Your rates are low, and our rates have continued to be low in the past, under 49% from what they told us. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we serve all 8 tribes in Utah here at our center. It's not just one tribe. And I was like, if we're serving more than one tribe, we could definitely get above 49%. So we jumped on board, like I said, in February, and our rates greatly increased when we had that summer challenge. Between May to July, when that summer challenge had ended, it increased by 5.9%, to where before, from February to May, it was only increasing 1% a time, you know, a little bit from social media ads we pushed out, our posters. So with that big partnership we had in the virtual run we did, it increased really like huge. I was like, oh my gosh, we're at 64%, you guys. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys got to look at this. So this Indian Leadership Circle ad, it has a date on it. And I share this once a month with our staff to let them see how well we're doing, encourage them. By the way, these are only self-response rates. So recently I had also learned about our enumerator rates, the ones where people have been going door to door. And I'll explain that at the end, how that also played a big part too in the numbers that we have. So we can go to the next slide, please. A part of the summer as well, with our running and then after it had ended, we had contracted a chef named Jason Vickers. He's out of Seattle, Washington. I forgot to add that his tribe, he is from the Nipmuc Nation as well himself. And he encouraged healthy dishes to cook at home. And he also helped us encourage as well the census to get out there, get responded, how it impacted our communities. And these are really pretty awesome to share with our community, because before this, we were doing in-house cooking demos here. Our community would come together every Friday to do what we called art markets, and they would kind of, it's like a little flea market from back home that they would sell their goods and jewelry and food. And at the same time, we have our dietitian that would share these healthy recipes with them and would check on our clients to see how they were doing, you know, health-wise. We don't have that as much anymore, you know, because of the whole pandemic. So then, of course, we got creative and we got this chef right here to create a series for us on our YouTube channel of healthy dishes. And then, of course, importantly, encouraging the 2020 census. So that was really awesome too. And you can go to the next slide, please. Right here is we have an annual back to school resource fair for our community. Again, we got creative with our in-house events and turned it into a drive-through. So for this, we actually hand out school supplies and backpacks to our community members and clients. Besides that, other resources get to come out. The students get to meet certain staff from their school district. Also, we get people from our neighboring big university here is Utah University. They get to invite the dental school out. So they have different resources here in our community that come and meet the families to see how they're doing. And we just like to make sure that they're prepared for the school year to come. So at this one, what we did and got creative was with what I had learned, there was actually a couple of produce factories that had went down due to COVID. So they had to shut down, but they were like, hey, we have all this good produce, where can it go to? So as staff, some of them were farmers markets, some of them were big produce companies. They donated all this food for our families. And you can see in this first picture here on the left side, our staff packed up all these different boxes of goodies, canned goods, vegetable produce that we were able to give to the families as well. And that was a huge impact. Here in the middle picture, you can see how the drive-through was, where we had the staff do the same procedure like Tori mentioned earlier. They called the staff by their cell phone number that we held up on a clipboard. They stayed on the phone with the staff, and the staff walked with the car to each canopy resource. And they loaded up their trunks and everything with the resources we gave out, the food boxes and the backpacks. And then that's me right there in the last picture. So as they were loading up the cars, I kind of hijacked each car and was like, hey, while they're loading up your car, would you be interested in taking the census with us? It doesn't take that long. And sure enough, they were more than happy to sit there and do the census with us. It was me and 2 other census takers that day, and they got a total of 25 people, 25 households that got responded with us that day. We were pretty impressed because that was our first on-site day that we got to get the census out for our community to come here and do it with us. Because with COVID or pre-COVID, we had planned it before for people to come into our building and take it with us. And then once everything happened, we were like, what are we gonna do? But then, you know, our practice with our COVID-19 testing drive-thrus and doing this made it successful. Even our census takers here in state said, well, we were doing this like a couple months back and we only altogether within 2 months got 5 or 7 people to respond. We're here in this resource fair, we got 25 where it was family-based, we got the households down. So that was really exciting to do. We were sunburnt by the end of the day, but we were like happy and sunburnt, peeling back the sun in our face, smiling, and we were like, it was worth it. Again, to see our clients, our families again, you know, make sure that they were okay. They walked away with the resources we wanted to give back to them. And then also to be able to encourage this important part for them to get counted too. To the next slide, please. And then here, we actually did this last Wednesday as well too. This was our 2020 census drive-through, and this is when I had actually just barely initially had met you, Mark. And this is actually pretty awesome too. We got out there to encourage everyone to come and take the 2020 census with us again, but we also handed out material to encourage everyone to get voted. You know, today's the National Voter Registration Day today. And surprisingly, about half the people that had walked up were like, do you guys also help with getting registered too? We did not that day, but we had that material as our backup of like, here, this is where you can go and get registered to vote. And while you're doing that, we could do your census today. A lot of the people actually to that day, we had a couple that had driven through. But this is also open to a lot of our community. We are just right by a track station actually. So majority of this number, the 22 that we had gotten counted, had just walked by our sidewalk and were like, hey, can I get counted? And then in the first picture is our community health workers, our CHWs that Tori had mentioned we made a brochure with. They're new staff. They were my backup that helped pass out PPE masks, sanitizer. They made sure they walked away with the voting packet that I have in that picture in the top right-hand corner and led them to the canopies that you see. In that bottom middle picture, you see that pretty lady with the pink hair. She's walking to our canopies. Mine was stationed right there beside that vehicle. And then I had another census taker with me on that very bottom right corner. She was taking the census with another community member. So it was a total of me and her, the 2 census takers. We got 22 people to respond. Again, it was a good time to do it again last week. It was awesome. I still get people coming in to take the census with us, which is awesome. I was like, yeah, if you're willing to come in. A part of our safety measures here is we all wear our masks. We all get our temperature taken when we see our clients as well. And as we go through those procedures, we're more than welcome to see our clients. And that's how we've been able to open back up our agency again. And then next slide, please. And then this is the part in the beginning I had mentioned. I believe our past census rate was about, it had grown to 60%, right? That I had gotten excited about. But our current one as of the 16th of this month is at 68.9%. And then another census partner I have in Colorado that sends me our rate updates said, oh, I haven't even told you about your enumeration rate. It's actually pretty awesome as a state. She couldn't divide the state number enumerator based on our tribal population, but this added together, it doesn't also on the enumeration rate break down tribal and then to other races. But she said as a whole, as a state with our self-response rate tribally that you see right there at 68.9%. is great. It's above what we were in history. We were below 50%. So I was like, thank goodness. I don't know what we did, but we did it. It wasn't only us as well. Like I said, there's 8 partnering tribes here, or 8 indigenous tribes from here in Utah, even mixed, that before we jumped on the census, we were hearing their PSAs. And then when we started coming out with our own PSAs on the radio and stuff like that, they were like, wasn't that you? Wasn't that you? And I'm like, no, I think that's the other tribes. We're just barely getting on here. So this was a big collective thing from our tribes here in Utah that got on this with us, and that made this great total of being 90%. Right now, I think our door-to-door responders are pretty much like wrapping it up. Like we did a pretty good job knocking this out of the water. I was wanting 100%. I'm still shooting for a goal of 100%. By the time it's September 30th, I'm like, I want to see 100. We'll see. I don't know if I'll get that, but I'm really proud of seeing how these numbers have increased greatly in our community, and it's responded well with our community, our school districts. They were like, yeah, I remember the census. I was a census takers 10 years ago. And I was like, really? Okay, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm really proud that we gotten to this point, and I am excited to see how our outcome is by, the end of this fall. So again, thank you. That was the end of my presentation part there.
Thank you so much, Samira. I really appreciate your creativity and the thoughtfulness with which you executed so many of your activities. It seemed like you had to ad lib frequently, and you're called upon to maybe use your organizer skills, to make those things happen. So I really appreciate how well those things turned out for you and sharing your experiences with us. This is a time for questions and answers. I've kept my eye on the chat box, and we'll keep the chat box open throughout the remaining minutes of our time together. I did have a question of sorts, and in particular about the enumeration versus the self-report. You mentioned that they don't separate the numbers, so that it's hard to know how specific the self-reporting rates are for different areas. But I do know that there was a real concern several months ago with how low the response rates were from some of the reservations in particular. So I'm curious if you were able to get a feel for how many people were from outside of your urban setting and maybe came from further away that might have been part of your enumeration effort. Did you have a feel for whether or not you're involving people from more rural settings, maybe?
I would say I was kept in the know of how well the rural settings were doing, but I know a majority of them, they travel back and forth from here in the city, that live here in the city, to back home with their relatives. So that was still a part that we were hurdling, like, are they still here in the city or are they back home? Even one reservation that was counted 10 years ago, nobody lives on there right now. So we're guessing between, I can't pinpoint which reservation it was. We're guessing between either they're living in Idaho currently right now or Utah. We're not sure where that tribe may have went to. The know of what I know about those rural tribes right now is how well they're doing in percent wise.
Thank you. That's good to know. I'm curious if the and I had a question for you, Victoria. The information you went through in terms of your goodie bags, for example, obviously it's a best practice to sort of limit the number of touches and the handling of materials. So I thought that was a really good idea about the kind of one-stop goodie bags. So good for you guys on that one. I'm curious if there are other tips about personal protection or concerns that may have surfaced as you got staff ready to work more closely in the early days. In particular, there were a lot of concerns about personal protection equipment. Did you encounter those kinds of barriers around PPE and having access issues, and if so, how you might have had to work to overcome those challenges with the absence of equipment, maybe?
Yeah, in the early days, we were Definitely had probably more like in the early days, we were being told we needed to wear gloves if we needed to hand something to someone, whereas now it's more of a best practice to just sanitize your hands in between each and not wear gloves, because generally when people wear gloves, they touch a bunch of other stuff, and then they think because they have gloves on, you know, they can now touch this, but it's better to just sanitize your hands and then just use clean hands. And then we also, in the early days, we didn't have people keep their windows up. We were trying to talk to people with their windows down. And then we created the calling instead, because we just, our executive director just saw that the risk was too high, specifically at COVID testing events, because if people are coming to COVID testing, they very well may be symptomatic or have been exposed. So we quickly changed that to being you need a call. And we have changed multiple times on the spot at the event. So at that first event that we did ourselves, where people were rolling down windows and we were speaking to them with face masks and face shields on, and we're trying to remain distance, but it's very hard because you're trying to yell to them so they can hear you through everything, and they're wearing a face mask. On the spot, our executive director had a few people go inside, make signs to say, call me at this number, and we changed it right then and there. So we were often short-staffed in the very beginning when we would change stuff, because we just had 1 or 2 staff members calling. We quickly learned that if we were going to have people call, we needed to have more staff members out there doing that. But I think at every event we've learned something. The past more recent events, we've very quickly learned that we often have issues with walk-ups, specifically because sometimes our walk-ups are potentially maybe homeless or transient population who have we have a lot of people who have been using that are around this area. So sometimes we encountered issues there where maybe they're trying to get too close, or we had one instance where a walk-up tried to walk up and like grab something off the table, and immediately I was like, no, sir, you need to stay back 6 feet. Like, I'm sorry. So we very quickly have designated a specific spot in our parking lot for walk-ups, where as soon as a walk-up shows up, one of the people that's helping with registration goes over to them and walks them over to those chairs and table, and they sit there and do their whole entire registration process there, away from everyone else. And then they go get their flu shot or their COVID test or census or whichever it is. So with walk-ups, we've had to adjust that on a regular basis, just because we never know what we're going to get in our area. Sometimes it will be people that are hostile, and we just kind of do our best to help them if we can, or just give them the PPE goodie bag. We've learned it's often helpful just, this is what we're giving out. And often that's all they want. They just want whatever it is that we're handing out. That's fine. Here's your PPE goodie bag. And then they're on their way. They don't really want to get tested or whatever. So that's helped us be able to give that to them. And then, it's nice knowing that we're giving them a face mask and hand sanitizer, as they may not have access to those things.
Yeah. That's great. I appreciate you getting your capacity to kind of play it by ear and learn as you go along. That's great. A question from our group chat has to do with this closeout of census time. Since we're getting close to the deadline for census submission, there's literally like 1 week left. And one of our participants wonders if you have any strategies or suggestions for the home stretch with the urgency around census canvassing.
So I did forget to mention the kind of like the bait we use here and how we get people to take the census with us. So when we had our first one in August, we had like $5 gift cards laying around, like for Walmart or something. Since like we had kind of mentioned a bit, the community we serve, it's really a low income poverty area. We serve a families in need. And of course, we have a Walmart just down the street. So we're all like, okay, we jump for joy because there's a Walmart right there. It's a need. Our families use it. So I had these bundle of $5 Walmart gift cards. And I was like, okay, telling the census takers in August, like, let's see if they'll bite. Let's do it. And I think, what was it? I had only gotten 15 gift cards that day. But even with the 15 I gave out, they were still taking the census with us. I took the gift card sign down and they were still like, yeah, let's do it. Beside that, our resource fair was also giving $125 gift cards to the families that were to get a backpack for their child and that were coming to the event. So around here, gift cards have been like kind of like an extra little gift that the families were like, yeah, if you can provide that for us, you know, we'll come, we'll do it, we'll sign up. So I did do that same initiative last week. I had bumped it up and gave out $25 gift cards for them coming on site. But I did make sure that myself, the census takers, and our CHWs were not promoting the census and to vote as a way of like, you got to go register to vote and you get paid for it. No, it's, you can do that separately on your own. And then as a compliment of you coming here on site and taking the census with us, this is our gift from us here at the Urban Indian Center to you for coming. So that is a part of it. I did forget to mention that we've given out gift cards to our families that have come, registered for our events, taken the census with us as well. And it seemed from a $5 gift card to $25 gift card, they were still thankful for it. And we're like, well, thank you. Acknowledge our effort in taking it with us.
Thank you. That's a great idea on how to use incentives. Of course, I want to caution you about the difference in incentives with census versus voter registration. States generally do have a strict regulation about not incentivizing the voter registration process. So yeah, got to be careful with those. We've got a few ideas and tips on this final stretch for the census that come from our team. Distributing materials with the online link and information on how to fill out census information is one idea, along with other materials you distribute. Organizing digital Get Counted events, using the online activities to organize those events. And there's a lot of information when you go to the When We All Vote portal through NCUIH in toolkits that have been distributed that can tell you on how to organize those kinds of digital events. So there's a lot of help online for how to organize those events. Other ideas are to use personal calls and have people actually use their contacts to reach out to local AIAN community members, in particular that personal touch of actually calling your own contacts and asking them about their census participation and encouraging them to ask others they know. So that person-to-person touch is really helpful. And then finally, an engagement activity that is recommended for the voter work is something they describe as tripling, which is the idea that you should personally reach out to 3 contacts of your own and ask them about have they completed the census, and if they have completed it, encourage them to reach out to 3 people they know and ask the same question. So you create this kind of call-in tree of people who are all asking the same question about, hey, did you get your census in? And that's particularly important among communities with non-responders, because there tend to be clusters of folks who have the same kind of barriers to responding. So again, those personal contacts can really be a helpful way of approaching how to rapidly reach out to people. We are at 1:52. And we're going to keep the chat box open, but I'm going to ask you to advance the slide so we can get to just a couple more information slides. Our next webinar a week from today will be September 29th at 1 p.m. Our topic will be best practices for UIOs on how to push census registration using virtual platforms and coalition building. Again, there'll be a focus on the digital techniques for reaching out to folks, and some of the discussion around increasing voter registration with social media, get out the census coalition building efforts, and resources, particularly online resources for urban American Indian and Alaska Native communities will be a feature of that webinar. So I hope you're able to join us a week from today at 1 p.m. One more slide and we're almost there. Okay, this is our call to action slide. There's a lot on here, and I want you'll get these slides, of course, but I just wanted to alert you to the number of links that are in there, the Native People Count links. Again, the When We All Vote portal, sponsored through the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, is a featured link that we invite you all to to take advantage of. It's a one-stop effort that tells you all about voter registration, and it's tailored so that whatever state you're in, you can get your own state's information, and you can even fill out information to request ballots and mail-in ballots drilled down to your own state level. So it's a one-stop area that can help anybody. So I would encourage you to share that link with whomever you come into contact with when it comes to voter registration activity. The census links are still live. You can go to the Census Bureau at 2020census.gov. Democracy is Indigenous is the logo that's connected to our coalition effort. And if you click on the link to NUIFC, that will take you to voter resources that are online as well. And then finally, Native People Count, online resources that can be shared. So our call to action is just full of information that you can find additional supports for your get out the vote and get out the census efforts. It's 1:55. We promised you to be respectful of your time, of course. So we've got 5 minutes left. If there's any last questions, comments, concerns, anything in the chat box, we're still open for a few seconds. So get it in quickly. And I'm going to personally thank Samira and Victoria, our presenters today. I really appreciate your support. You came through for us from Salt Lake City. And you know, I appreciate you also reminding us about the NBA player Gobert, because that seems so long ago, but about that controversy that got started there. But it's almost like the COVID concerns almost started in Salt Lake City when that happened. And I think shortly after that, the NBA shut its season down after that happened. So that's where a lot of public attention got generated from that particular activity with the Utah, I think it's the Jazz, right? So again, I appreciate your help and support as speakers and presenters. Very, very good information. I'm glad our participants, again, will get the links and the PowerPoint slides out to all of our participants. We look forward to you're joining us again next week for webinar number 2, and we'll continue to build our information and our skills and competencies around all these civic engagement activities. So I appreciate your joining us today. I think I can safely say we can give you back 3 minutes of your time. It's 1:57 Eastern Standard Time. So with that, I'll sign off and say goodbye for everyone. Have a good afternoon. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.